Hello and welcome. My name is Ahmed and this is Major. We're both tutors at the Student Success Center, and today with us is Dr. Davies, who has led several Success Center workshops each year. We're together to talk about some of the ways that college is different from high school and how students can work to bridge the transition more successfully. This video is a first in a series that will help you, the viewer, acquire the tools you'll need. Dr. Davies, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure.
In college 101 seminar you do for us, I understand that you have a metaphor you like to use to introduce some of the big ways in which college and high school are different.
I do. I have what I think is a pretty good metaphor to sort of understand what's going on that kind of ties it back a little bit to what someone might experience in real life. So, gentlemen, I want you to imagine you live in a town and there's one restaurant in this town. Okay? It's whatever your favorite sit-down restaurant is. You know, whether it's your local mom and pop sit-down restaurant or it's an Applebee's or Chili's, okay? So get that in your head, and you've decided you're going to go out. Two of you are going to go out, you're going to have dinner. And I want you to think about, for a moment, that process that you go through to get your food. So kind of fix that in your mind for a minute. Let's kind of walk through that. So you come up to the restaurant, you open the door, and what's the first thing that happens?
Hostess. Yes, you have an party.
Right, so you have a host comes in and says, hey, how many are in your party? Fantastic. They may even say, welcome to, we're so glad you chose us. Something like that, but there's some welcoming them in. And then they're going to say, how many are in your party, and maybe where would you like to sit? Would you like a booth? Maybe sit over here in the dining area, or would you like to go over and sit, you know, in that, where the tabletops are, and they got like the 8,000 TVs or whatever, you know, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then what's going to happen?
Choose where you want to sit at. Somebody takes you to the seat.
Okay.
Hostess takes you to the seat.
Right. And then?
Then you're going to look over the menu, right?
Right, so but what may happen is someone's going to bring you a menu, right? They may at that point say, hey, we have some specials, right? You know, hey, we've got the tilapia, and, you know, we've got a really nice sirloin steak, and it's going to be served with this and that, and kind of help you out. They're going to say, hey, you might, and then they're going to say, hey, you might like this on the menu, or you might like that on the menu, and then they're going to say, may I take your drink orders, right? And you're going to say, well, give us a couple of minutes. They're going to go away, and they're going to come back, bring you your drink orders. And then what's going to happen?
And you're going to tell them what you would like to order.
Great, you're going to tell them what you'd like to order. Fantastic. And they say, okay, great. Would you like that medium rare or all that kind of thing, right? And off they go, and you have a conversation, and at some point, and hopefully in the not too distant future, if it's a good restaurant, right? Your food comes out. And you eat, right? And somewhere right after you get your food, and usually it's not the same person that brings it to you, somebody brings your food, and then your waiter or waitress comes back and asks you,
You want dessert?
before that,
Is everything okay?
is everything okay? They're going to make sure they got your order right,
Yeah.
that you're satisfied with your meal, that everything's going great, right? And you're going to say, they always ask you the minute you take a bite of food, right? That's how it always works, yeah? Okay. But, you know, after you get past that, you say, yeah, everything's fine, or hey, wait, I think I ordered this instead of that, or can I get a little of this? And they get you taken care of, right? And you go through the meal, and at some point they show up and say, hey, is there anything else? Would you like a little dessert? And you say yes or no, right? And you kind of get towards the end of the meal, and the waitress comes up and says, hey, will there be anything else? You say no. They hand you your check, right?
Yes.
And you get to look over the check after you've eaten the food. It's great. Give them your payment, right? They go away. They take care of the payment stuff. They bring you back whatever change. And then you guys can sit there for as long as you want, right? And then you leave. And you had a meal.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you how much. How much work did you have to put into getting that meal?
Not too much.
You showed up and everything was taken care of for you, right? You have to really enjoy that meal. Okay. Now let's say, for the purpose of our metaphor, like I say, you've only ever eaten at this restaurant, right? This is your whole experience, your whole life, this is your restaurant. Now you're going to go visit your relative in some other town, right? And you're out running errands and such, you know, as one does when visiting relatives in a distant town, and you get hungry. Well, your relative still has a couple errands to run, and they say, hey, there's a fill-in-your-favorite fast food place, right? McBurger Queen or something down the road, right? You're going to go, they say, go, why don't you get something to eat there, and I'll meet you. And you say, well, sure, it's a restaurant. How different could it be? And you go to your local fast food restaurant. Now remember, you've only ever been to a sit-down restaurant like a Chili's or an Applebee's. What's it like for you walking into a McDonald's or a Wendy's? How's that going to go for you?
They expect a lot more out of you, right?
Hey, let's actually think about walking through and the obstacles you might face. So you walk in the front door, and what do you expect to happen?
A host. There is no host.
There is no host, right? So you're going to do what? You're probably going to stand there for a little while and look around until finally you figure out there's this part over on your left, and for some reason it's always on your left, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? There's going to be the section on the left where there are a bunch of tables and there are people with food sitting at them, so what will you probably do?
You'll sit down.
You're going to go sit down.
You just wait.
And hang out and wait. And maybe at some point you're going to recognize there are no menus. There's not that thing on the table that takes up way too much space that has every condiment known to humankind, right? And you'll look up and you will see that, wait, there's this great big board with pictures and prices on it. That's the menu. And then you're going to at some point realize that most people walk in the door and they go to the counter. And they talk to what looks like someone in a uniform at a counter, right? So at that point, what will you probably do?
Go to the counter.
And you're really hungry, right? I mean, you've been sitting here for a while. You're probably a little cranky. You're a little hungry. You get up there, and they say...
Yeah, take your order.
Right. Now, by the way, if you're used to nothing but a sit-down restaurant, you might say, what are the specials today, right? Well, we have a quarter-pound hamburger, and we have a, probably not much. And so you're going to order, and then what are you immediately going to go do?
Sit back down.
Right. And as you start to walk away, what is the person going to do? They're going to say, aren't you going to pay me? And you're going to think, wait, pay you before I get my food? Your whole way of interacting with this new environment is going to be completely different, right? Okay, and then you're going to, even if you pay, you may then go back to your table and realize, no, they're not going to bring you your food. You've got to go up to the counter and get it. The whole thing is backwards, right? Okay. So that's our metaphor. A person who has this idea of this is the way the world works. I've always gone into a restaurant. I've always gotten a lot of support and a lot of help, and I've had to put in fairly minimal effort to get the thing that I want. That person then goes into a very different environment that provides the same basic set of services, food for money, but in a completely different paradigm. Now, what's the big difference in terms, let's say for you, in those two places?
You're in the fast food restaurant, you're required to do stuff for yourself.
There's a lot more stuff you got to do for yourself, right? You have a lot more responsibility in making sure you get your food, right? You've got to be a lot more proactive. You've got to do a lot more things that you initiate to make sure that that happens, right? High school and college are a little like that, I think. Okay? When you're in a high school environment, the way that environment's sort of structured is a lot of things get taken care of for the student, okay? Because it's a mandatory attendance kind of thing. What happens in high school is the high school ensures that the student has as many obstacles cleared out to be successful. And the student, a lot of the responsibilities aren't the student's responsibilities. They're taken care of by the staff at the high school, right? The faculty, the administrators, the staff members, counselors, whatever, right? Okay? The student just has to say, I want this and I want that and I want to be able to do this, and it happens. You come to college, and it's a very different kind of an environment, right? At college, you show up, and you've got to make your own schedule. Somebody doesn't make your schedule for you. You've got to decide what classes you need, when you want to take them, how many of them are you going to take. You've got to pay. I mean, in high school, you never pay for anything practically. In college, you've got to pay before we'll let you into a classroom, right? You don't pay your fees on time, we drop your schedule, and then you don't have any classes at all. You get into your classes, and your professors maybe assume that you're going to be a lot more proactive in getting the material. The way the institution's administered assumes that you're going to be a lot more involved in that process. So, in that metaphor, and we don't necessarily want to equate the quality of a college education and a high school education to the quality of food at, say, a Chili's versus the quality of food at a McDonald's. I don't think that's necessarily a very good analogy there. But the key idea is that if you only know one thing, it's probably not a good idea to assume that the way everything works in, say, the high school environment is going to be super successful in the college environment. And I think the difference, which you guys pointed out, is that sense that there's a lot bigger sense of responsibility placed on the student in that college environment, right? And so that's probably the biggest thing, I think, in terms of if a student, if someone watching this video can sort of get in their head, is that when they come to college, they've got to take care of a lot more things, and they've got to recognize they're responsible for everything that happens to them here. The student has a much better chance of being successful in college than the student who assumes that everything that happened at high school happens exactly the same way at college. Because, the problem is, of course, it looks a lot alike at first, right? But once you get over here, there's some pretty significant differences. So in a sense, that's kind of the end of my metaphor. Like I said, when the metaphor is pretty limited, it does describe that big transition that a lot of students have to make, that adjustment that goes on.
All right. So what advice would you give a student?
I think the biggest piece of advice that comes out of this is the student cannot assume that some adult, some authority figure, whatever, is going to make sure everything goes well for them, that something happens for them, okay? They have to take an active role and be proactive in making sure they get the college education they want to get. I think that's probably the biggest lesson that comes out of it. Better.
Great, and thanks. In the next video in the series, Dr. Davies will talk about very specific ways that college is different than high school and what that means for students.